I worry that this will have global consequences. I hope not. But the next couple of days will determine the future of this planet. It can be a tempered approach. The United States will rein in Israel and say, listen, they took pot shots back at you after you took pot shots. You just got to fucking take the L here. Benjamin Netanyahu's plane is already in the air, by the way. This is an amazing story by Tal Shalev. Ahead of a possible attack from Iran, Netanyahu moved over the weekend to the house of Simon Falek in Jerusalem, which according to previous reports is a fortified bunker. Falek is a U.S. billionaire, a GOP donor, and the owner of Duty Free America. Netanyahu stayed at his house at the beginning of the war after rockets were fired on Jerusalem. It's 1:13 a.m. They tweeted a few days ago that the attack would happen at 1:12. I mean, sure. That's, irrelevant in my opinion. All right.
And which earlier tonight updated its guidance to Israeli civilians, limiting public gatherings in northern Israel as well as the Israeli communities surrounding the Gaza Strip, also closing schools for the coming days. But it does now appear, as we've been anticipating this potential Iranian response, that we at least now know the first chapter of that response and the form that it is beginning to take. We also know that Israeli government officials in recent days have been warning that an Iranian attack from Iranian soil onto Israeli soil would result in a commensurate Israeli response, meaning an Israeli attack on Iranian soil. So we will have to see how this all plays out, to what extent Israel is able to intercept those drones using its air defense capabilities. A lot of questions, but we are starting to get the beginning of the answers in terms of what exactly this Iranian attack, what shape it is beginning to take.
Yeah, what it might look like. Okay, Jeremy, stay with us. I want to go back to Mark Esper for a second because, Mark, we're kind of digesting what Jeremy is just telling us now, and I want to get your take on a couple of things. First of all, the fact that it's going to take several hours for these drones to get there. What does that mean in terms of being able to shoot these down, to prepare for them? What does that look like?
Sure, it's not difficult to shoot the drones down. They launch dozens because some will malfunction en route, some will get lost. You want some to make their way through. But if this is really an Iranian full-throated attack, they would phase it in so all missiles, so everything hits their targets around the same time. So at some point, they would launch ballistic missiles. It's worth noting that Iran has the largest and most diverse ballistic missile force in the region, and it's probably their singularly best conventional capability. But they would launch ballistic missiles at some point to time with the landing of the cruise missiles and drones, and that would only take a matter of minutes for ballistic missiles to get there, probably under 30. And then, look, if they can really get their proxies on board, you'd see Hezbollah in southern Lebanon launch thousands of the, 150,000 rocket and missile inventory they have in southern Lebanon. You'd launch all that at the same time, and the purpose would be to overwhelm Israeli air defenses so that some of the either rockets or missiles or drones or ballistic missiles will make their way through and hit their targets. But again, if that happens, I can't help but think you're looking at the beginnings of a major regional war.
And we have to just take a beat, and you've said this, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think the other thing that Jeremy mentioned was that Israel had said it will respond in kind to whatever Iran ultimately does. And you can't help but realize that we're teetering right on an edge here, Mark, and that we are at this very precarious moment where President Biden and his team are facing what could not just become an expanding conflict, but an incredibly serious one that you're kind of laying out before us right now.
Yeah, look, it's not unusual that, again, it may just be a limited attack of cruise missiles or drones at, again, an Israeli outpost or command post in the Golan Heights. Whether they hit or miss, the Iranians will privately claim victory to the Iranian people, and they'll privately convey messages to Israel and the United States that they're done, they're through, they've made their point, and that'll be the end of it to some degree. So, there are a wide range of things that could happen here. And as I said earlier, this could just be one aspect of it, too. They could go after Israeli embassies abroad, as another means to kind of inflict the punishment they want. This is a country that goes eye for an eye. They're going to want to attack a like target with a like outcome. What happened is...
What do you mean, go for eye for an eye? It's just like, that's the norm.
Liners in Iran, enough to establish.
And they
their
haven't
street
gone
cred,
eye for an eye at
with their
all, as a
proxy
matter of
groups throughout
fact.
the Middle
If
East, but
anything,
not
they've been
enough to
infinitely
start
more
a Middle
restrained than
East
Israel.
war
Israel's the
that
one
they
that
will
has escalated
lose when it
over and
comes to
over
that.
and
So,
over again.
It'll be very interesting to see how they're walking this tightrope here as the following hours unfold.
Yeah, and let's go back to Ben Wiedemann, who is there in Beirut. Ben, as we talk about the potential for this conflict to widen out, I know you've spent a lot of time there in the last 6 months as the Israel-Hamas war has played out, and also we've seen a lot of action there at that border. What do you know about the potential for this to widen out, and what's happening around where you are?
Well, there's real potential for this happening. Now, what we've heard from sources very close to Hezbollah, which of course is allied with Iran, is that this is Iranian response to the Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus was going to be, and now we see is strictly Iranian, that Iran's allies and proxies in the region weren't going to participate in this. It was going to be an Iranian strike. However, the same source told us that if the Israeli response escalates and that the situation deteriorates, that Hezbollah and other allies and proxies of Iran across the region will come in to support Tehran. So really, I mean, as I was saying before, this strike, much anticipated, the Iranian response, much anticipated, and as we're hearing from Israeli military spokesmen, it's going to take hours for these drones to actually reach Israeli territory, and the chances of them inflicting any serious damage are relatively small. The question is, how will Israel respond? We've heard Israeli officials say that if the attack comes from Iranian soil, Israel will respond on Iranian soil. So there's a real danger of escalation now, as your previous guest was talking about. This is the first time Iran and Israel, or rather Iran, strikes directly at Israel. A threshold has been crossed. Now it's up to the United States and others perhaps to try to rein in the situation. Now one cannot help but think that similar to the aftermath of the American assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in January 2020, the Iranian response to that, the Iranians warned the Americans it was going to come, and it would appear that in this case, given all of these sort of indications we're getting, President Biden returning urgently to the White House, is that perhaps messages were passed from the Iranians to the Americans that this was coming. So there are channels of communication open between Washington and Tehran, and those will be critical to avoid some sort of escalation that ends up being a regional war involving Israel, Iran, the proxies and allies of Iran, and perhaps even the United States. Jessica?
And on that note, let's go out to the White House where Kevin Liptak is standing by. And Kevin, I know you just reported that the U.S. officials have officially confirmed that Iran has launched those drones toward Israel. We know that the president has ended his weekend in Delaware, is on his way back to the White House. He is meeting with his national security team there. What more can you tell us about what they're going to be doing there? Who's meeting with him in that situation room? And also,
I told you, by the way, that they would stop saying this is retaliatory the moment that fucking drones were in the air. And approximately 23 minutes after the drones were in the air, they've already dropped the whole pretense, like why Iran did this, and are reframing the narrative as Iran struck first. And you will see red lines are being crossed by Iran against Israel is the standing narrative. So quickly did it change. Yesterday, I told you yesterday that this was going to happen, and it's already happening. Israel has a right to defend itself is going to be the meta again.
All of the principles in the American national security establishment, you know, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, Jake Sullivan, all of these officials arriving at the White House soon for this very high stakes meeting as these drones make their way towards their target. Now, we did know from American officials ahead of this occurring that they had detected Iran moving military equipment within its territory, including drones and cruise missiles. It wasn't clear at that point whether that was a deterrent posturing or whether they actually intended to launch them from their own soil into Israel or towards Israeli targets. That is now becoming clearer. We also knew that the American military was repositioning its own assets in the region, in part to help Israel shoot down anything that was fired its way. And so as the U.S. watches in real time as these drones head towards their targets, they will certainly be hoping to intercept them and help Israel in that way. That has been President Biden's key message over the last week as he talked about this significant attack in the offing, was that American support for Israel would be ironclad. Despite his current differences with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's essentially said that that wouldn't get in the way of American support for Israel in the case of Iranian reprisals. So certainly the U.S. watching this very closely, but also watching very closely what Israel will do next.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Mark, I want to go back to you because you've been in that room. You've been in the Situation Room as a former Secretary of Defense during the Trump administration. What is that like? What are they considering right now, and what are they watching for?
Yeah, I think when they meet with the president, of course, they'll be giving the best estimates of what the Iranian attack line looks like, what they may be going for, anticipated battle damage assessment, things like that. Of course, Lloyd Austin will be speaking to his counterparts, not just in Israel, but again, Arab partners are really big here. They matter. Their views matter. They're going to be concerned about not just the Israeli response, but what the United States will do. So you got to be speaking to your Arab partners also. But then I think at some point, once there's more clarity on what happens, the outcome on the ground, talking with the Israelis, what will the U.S. do? What will the U.S. support? Will the United States put more forces into the region to support Israel or to backstop U.S. forces? So we're not at that point yet. I think right now what they have to see is what is the extent of the attack, what's the likely damage, the outcome, because those two things will have a big impact on how Israel thinks through a response, if any, to this, what looks to be an unprecedented Iranian
declares
attack.
The start of operations against
And just
Israel
to bring everyone in, again, on
Iraq.
our breaking news, Iran has launched an attack against Israel using dozens of drones. We were told they have launched those drones from Iranian territory. It could take several hours for them to arrive at their destination. I want to go now to Clarissa Ward, who is live in Tel Aviv. Clarissa, as all of this is unfolding, what are you learning?
Well, obviously, this is unprecedented and unnavigated territory. There are very high concerns about the number of different scenarios that could plausibly play out here. We have hours until we expect those drones to be entering Israeli airspace. The question becomes, will they potentially be accompanied by some kind of missile fire from Iranian proxies? Obviously, the IDF and Israeli government taking this very seriously. Schools have been closed. Gatherings of more than 1,000 people have been forbidden, at least until Monday. And so everybody here is sort of grappling with what exactly to expect. On the one hand, Iran very clearly telegraphing its actions. And so in that sense, it seems to be positive. They're looking for potentially a sort of Goldilocks approach, if you like, trying to retaliate without escalating into a full-on regional conflagration. At the other moment, though, of course, there are high tensions, high fears, because we are entering sort of unnavigated territory, because there are so many different possibilities as to how this could potentially shake out. And so a sense of high alert, I would also say calm, but definitely everybody watching very closely to see what will be happening in the coming hours as we anticipate the arrival of those drones.
Israeli sources tell the IDF military radio that they believe that the Iranian attack on Israel will also include cruise missiles.
Intercepted or shot down, but the real question becomes whether there will be some sort of supplementary force as they get closer to Israel, Jessica.
Right. And Clarissa, before I let you go, you've covered this region for many, many years. And you're talking, and our other guests are also alluding to this as well, kind of this unprecedented moment. Can you give us some context about what it means that Iran is launching these drones toward Israel from Iranian territory? Just kind of give us some context around that.
Well, the context of Iran launching an attack directly on Israel from Iranian territory is something that we haven't seen in decades. And that is why you are seeing a lot of concern, a heightened state of alert, why you're seeing President Biden coming back to the White House, because everybody is aware now keenly that this could develop into something dramatically more serious. At the same time, I do think it's important to underscore that Iran has been very clear and has telegraphed that it will mete out a retaliation for that attack on the Iranian compound, the diplomatic embassy compound in Damascus on April 1st. And so some are extrapolating from that by telegraphing it so clearly, Iran is trying to find that precise point. And this is where it gets dangerous and difficult.
She's doing a decent job
between escalating and retaliating and avoiding creating a scenario that you can't pull back from the brink of. There is always the capacity for things to go wrong. And that is why there is so much tension. That's why there is a high degree of anticipation, even though this moment has been expected since April 1st, Jessica.
Right. It is a razor's edge. All right, Clarissa, stand by. I want to go to General Mark Hertling, who's joined us as well. And General, we just heard Clarissa really lay it all out there. As we await these drones in their travel time, we see how Israel might respond, as it does take hours for them to get to their final destination. But also broadening it out a little bit more, Israel has promised to respond in kind to whatever Iran ultimately does, and however this unfolds over the next hours or days or however long this might go on. What does that say to you, and what do you think that could potentially look like?
Dude, if I'm a rapture enjoyer, evangelical, I'm so horny right now. I'm like, oh, the end of times is here.
We don't know how many aircraft are in the air. It's slow moving and it's developing. But I'd suggest that that's just the first of many actions. There could be the potential for
I'm losing my mind.
Slow-moving
going,
drones,
this is it.
Jessica.
It's happening. Finally.
About the speed of a Piper
the red heifers,
Cub or
baby.
a Cessna aircraft. They're just very slow, 150 miles an hour at best. So they're going to be supplemented from, I think, from attacks from other directions. Hezbollah is going to step up their actions, although even while we haven't been watching what's been going on in the northern part of Israel as much, the Israeli Defense Forces have been reporting multiple attacks on a daily basis from Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. You also have the potential for a synchronized attack between Hezbollah and Lebanon, these slow-moving drones, which will take about 4 to 5 hours to get to the boundaries of Israel, with other actions by PMF and some faster-moving missiles, cruise missiles potentially, or even larger range missiles. So those are quick. Those move about the size of a jet. If Iran is able to synchronize the slow-moving actions with the faster-moving actions, you could see a very big synchronized attack. Israel's not going to wait for all this. I would suggest that in their command and control headquarters right now, they've got a lot of patience.
Whoever hurts us.
I'll pick up on what my colleague Jeremy Diamond was talking about here. Israel itself has a layered aerial defense system. Its long-range aerial defense would be the Arrow 3 interceptor. That would intercept ballistic missiles and can work out of the atmosphere. We have seen that used, if I'm not mistaken, over the course of the past 6 months to intercept certain launches coming from or coming down the Red Sea from the Houthis in Yemen. That's the long-range interceptor, Arrow 3. The medium-range interception system is David's Sling. That is very similar to the U.S. THAAD system. That is also stationed at different points in the country. And then the short-range interception system that we've seen used so many times, not only over the course of the past 6 months, but in the past as well, is Iron Dome. And that intercepts within a few dozen miles here. Certainly that would be able to intercept these drones. The real question is, and this is what we've been speculating and wondering about, these drones will take hours to get there. Cruise missiles could arrive much faster, within a couple of hours perhaps, and then ballistic missiles are within a few minutes. So it still remains an open question. Is this it? Or is there more coming, and could Iran try to coordinate a number of different types of weapons to hit at the same time? That, of course, is what we're waiting to see here as these drones make their way over what will be an hours-long process to reach their targets.
Right. We know the beginning, the first chapters of this story so far. Let's go to Alex Marquardt right now. And Alex, you're getting some new information on the time frame here.
How long
shivering. This might take
I don't know
to
why.
unfold.
Yeah, this is a really interesting statement from the White House, Jessica. The White House putting essentially an expectation on how this is going to unfold in terms of the duration. They're saying that it's going to be a number of hours. That's coming from a spokesperson for the National Security Council. So they're not saying that this is going to be over very quickly. They're not saying that this is something that's going to last for days. But there is an expectation that we have been talking about because of the weaponry that the Iranians are choosing, that this is going to take several hours. It's almost midnight in Israel. That means that this could stretch into the pre-dawn hours. It will be very interesting to see whether it lasts longer than that. Of course, there's a very distinct possibility that Israel then decides to retaliate for this retaliation. And then we could really be off to the races in terms of an expanded conflict. But we aren't there yet. Jessica, we have been talking about this Iranian retaliation for almost 2 weeks now, since Israel struck that alleged consulate, the Iranian building in Damascus, and killed 7 members of the Revolutionary Guard, including one of their senior-most commanders who was in charge of the Syria and the Lebanon theaters. And so we knew this retaliation was coming, and there was all kinds of speculation about what...
Yeah, I mean, they telegraphed it. They openly said that they were going to do it. Here, more updates. Fitux News says, breaking, Iranian drones began crossing Iraqi airspace and approached Syria and Jordan. The missile attack will begin soon, Iranian sources tell Iran's semi-official Fars news agency. So, did he say alleged consulate?
Ability that Israel will then retaliate against Iran itself. Now, this could have also been predicted because the attack that Israel carried out against that building in Damascus was carried out from Israeli soil. So what we're seeing here, I think, is a very calculated, very calibrated, but very significant retaliation by Iran. And Iran has been doing, I think, a pretty good job at telegraphing what its intentions are. The United States, a variety of European countries, Arab countries,
this is kind
Turkey,
of shocking.
in the days
this
leading
is
up
like
to
coverage
today,
that I'm not
all been
expecting.
telling Iran, do not escalate this conflict. But at the same time, there was a recognition that Iran would have to respond to that attack last week. They would have to save face. But despite what we're seeing right now, Jessica, there is no real sense that Iran wants to widen this conflict. And so it's going to be very interesting in the coming hours, as the White House has just said, to see what kind of weaponry they add to this, if it's just the drones.
How much faster are missiles than drones? Is it expected missiles will follow up the drones? Yes, they're much faster.
Neighboring countries to Israel joining the fight, what the targets they go after are, and then whether there are other Israeli targets in other countries like embassies. So we are starting to get a lot more of the answers that we've been looking for, but so many questions remain, Jessica.
So many questions, and it will take some time to see exactly where this all lands. But what we do know, again, just to underscore to everyone, is that Iran has launched these drones toward Israel from Iranian territories. So, Kim Dozier, let's go to you, and let's talk about these drones for a second. We now have Alex's reporting there that this could unfold coming from the NSC over a matter of hours. A number of hours. It takes hours for these drones to arrive to their destination. What more are you gathering from all of this information?
Well, I'm just hearing from a senior U.S. official that the drones are aimed
I don't know
in,
how
quote,
valid this
unquote,
stuff is. The Syrian
directions.
army will defend.
So they're worried it's going to hit multiple parts of Israel. And the official says, as Oren was reporting, that yes, the U.S. military is trying to track them to help Israel knock them out of the sky. The worry is that there will be so many headed to so many different parts that Israel's air defenses will be overwhelmed. Now, the question is, has Iran waited these 2 weeks to telegraph to Israel? So perhaps it is planning to hit military targets, naval ships in Haifa and south in Eilat, army bases across the country. Any of this could be seen as, Israel hit its a military target in Syria, Iran is striking back. But this is still extraordinary. Any attacks that have been blamed on Israel that have happened inside Iran have been covert. This is an overt operation, and it's going to trigger an international response no matter what's hit. One Israeli former intelligence official I was speaking to said she was going to sleep because she was expecting many long days to come.
Yeah, many long days to come. All right, Kim, stand by.
Chatters, there's going to be a lot of these like OSIN accounts, unless it's coming from like Elint News in the chat, and even he might get stuff wrong. It's the fog of war. I have to repeat, remember, it is, you know, there will be misinformation. You're probably inadvertently, without recognizing, spreading misinformation. When you send me any link and every link that you see, for the record, like there needs to be confirmed reports.
1st of April when Israel attacked that Iranian consulate in Damascus. But tonight, they really are skyrocketing. We're seeing the airspace over Jordan, for instance, being completely closed. And in southern Lebanon, of course, which has been the scene of daily and often deadly exchanges of fire between Israel and Hezbollah, we've seen that this evening, just before news of the Iranian launch took place, that there were some fairly intense Israeli air raids along the Lebanon southern border. We're hearing now from residents down there that there is an intense Israeli presence of warplanes in the sky. I think probably the scenario the Israelis are worried about is that there could be more done by Iran's allies and proxies around the region, even though we've heard from officials, sources very close to Hezbollah, that the initial strike would be Iranian and exclusively Iranian. The worry is how will Israel respond to the Iranian response to the strike on the consulate in Damascus? And that's really where the danger lies. And certainly in terms of danger, Lebanon is high on the list.
Famously, by the way, Israel making the world very safe for Jewish people living in Israel. Once again, just remember that fucking line that no Jew in the world would be saved without Israel. Doesn't seem so safe for the Jews living in Israel right now. Doesn't seem safe for anyone living in Israel or anyone living in America even. And it's kind of wild, because this kind of belligerent action in the region was, of course, going to draw up some kind of response, some kind of retaliation. It's weird. It's weird to think that, like, every single thing I've been saying for fucking years about Israel is just basically coming to fruition, as Israel has felt more galvanized year over year over year, especially after the Trump administration, and definitely with the Biden administration as well. Let's hear what CNN is saying.
The region is waiting to see when those projectiles reach Israel. Will they actually hit anything? As we know, Israel has the ability, along with the United States, to track them as they fly in the direction of Israel. And we've seen that whether it's the Arrow anti-missile system, the Iron Drone, and other means, whether Israel will be able to actually shoot all of them down before they actually hit the ground. Alex?
Clarissa, to you, we're showing live pictures of that Tel Aviv skyline. One of the major questions is, of course, what the targets are intended to be. Now, there is a sense that if Iran does not want to escalate this, that they won't go, for example, for civilian centers. They won't try to target downtown Tel Aviv, where you are. Obviously, we don't know what those targets are going to be, but what is the Israeli government saying to its citizens in order to stay safe in a way that we might be able to glean what it is they believe those intended targets to be?
Well, essentially, they're saying this is a moment for caution. This is a moment to listen carefully to what you're being told to do. This is a moment not to panic. This is a moment for unity, as you heard Ben Wiedemann saying there. Schools are closed. Universities are closed. Camps are closed. No gatherings of more than 1,000 people. Everyone here being urged to keep a close eye on the news, on their phones, and pay attention to what they're told to do. I do think that the prevailing wisdom had been that Iran was telegraphing this for some time, that they had made it very clear they felt it was necessary to respond to Israel's attack on April 1st in Damascus that killed 7 Iranian officials, Quds forces, according to the Israelis. But now the question is, are they able to retaliate in a way that does not escalate? Are they able to find that so-called Goldilocks spot? And the fear is, of course, that given the backdrop, given the tensions, given the fact that we are really in a kind of unprecedented moment, that there are so many things that could go wrong, that there are so many potentially unintended consequences.
I'm Israeli and I live in the north. I'm going to sit in my balcony and just watch the missiles and drones come in law.
That very few people across
safe,
the
bro.
region
What the
actually
fuck?
want to see. You have had U.S. CENTCOM commander General Eric Kurilla here for 2 days. He just left, talking about how the U.S. will work with Israel to deter any kind of attack. But certainly there is a sense that this is the pressure.
Bro, don't rely on the Iron Dome. These are not bathtub missiles. You know what I mean? These are not bathtub missiles being lobbed from fucking Gaza, made by like 17-year-olds using Israeli rocket parts. These are big boy drones and possibly big boy missiles to come as a follow-up. Is it, you know, this isn't like, I mean, even when Hezbollah ends up striking northern Israel, there is more of a threat than the Hamas and Islamic Jihad rockets. But this is, you know, this is the big dog in the region in comparison to all of the other regional operatives. These are not, this is no longer proxies. I mean, proxies are also involved, certainly, but this is the IRGC itself. So I would be very careful.
Where are trying to make sure that Iran and Israel essentially do thread it carefully in a way to avoid this escalation. I want to get to Jeremy Diamond, who's in Jerusalem. Jeremy, what have the Israelis been saying about how they may respond to this Iranian attack? Because as we're seeing now, this is not proxies yet, perhaps, coming from other countries. This is an attack from Iranian soil, raising the possibility of an Israeli response against Iranian soil.
Yeah, Alex, there's no question that in recent days, Israeli officials have been trying to deter this very scenario. A direct attack by Iranian forces launched.
Yeah, no, they haven't been trying to deter that,
soil
to be
directed
honest.
at Israeli soil. And indeed, in
Bro, fuck you mean deter? No, they haven't. They've had one speed, dude, and it's go. They've been just hitting go speed non-fucking stop since October 8th.
Israel, meaning an Israeli attack directed at Iranian soil. Now,
it's wild that, like, it wasn't enough to satiate their fucking bloodlust to kill tens of thousands of Palestinians, that they had to also strike Beirut, that they also had to strike a Iranian consulate compound. Like, what are you doing? It's crazy. Every step of the way, I told you that it's fucking insane that they are behaving in the most belligerent way possible. It was ridiculous. Opening up multiple fronts deliberately is wild to me, especially when considering that that was a major fear from the jump for Israel, was potentially having to fight Hezbollah in the north, possibly withstand attacks from Yemeni forces as well, and then also Iranian forces, the IRGC proxies that are in Syria and in Iraq. That literally was the fear from American military analysts, that like Israel's going to get swarmed on all fronts and not be able to withstand this retaliation. Israel then followed the next 6 months in the most ridiculous, by doing the most ridiculous shit You could imagine. Oh my God, the analyst numbers are growing, by the way. It's ridiculous. It is so nutty. It was never about self-defense. There was no self-defense. There was no self-defense in this regard.
Days now preparing for exactly this scenario that is now currently underway. A senior administration official from here confirming that many drones have been launched from inside Iran into Israel. They expect that number to really be just north of what we had reported coming into this. And just to underscore, of course, the gravity of this situation, President Biden was set to finish out the weekend in Rehoboth Beach. He has now cut that trip short and has just returned to the White House, walking straight back into the Oval Office, where later today we expect him to, of course, convene his team of national security advisors. And they, of course, in turn, have been in close contact with their Israeli counterparts in the region, as well as all of this has unfolded. And we saw moments ago the National Security Council saying in a statement that they expect that this attack is likely to unfold over a number of hours. You know, you take into account just the travel time of some of these drones. And yeah, we certainly expect that this is going to be a late night here at the White House, with the president continuing to get updated as this situation unfolds. I do think it's just worth noting a couple of things that we have been reporting leading up to this very moment that's important from here, our stance here at the White House. You know, U.S. officials had said that they expected that Iran would be directly involved in launching these attacks into Israel, but they had also said that that it is certainly possible that proxies and other affiliated groups could also be involved. So there's that. We also know that Iran was expected to attack multiple targets in Israel, but there could also be other targets, other assets in the region that are also targeted. So it could be sort of further reaching than what we are currently aware of. And then, of course, the idea that the U.S. is ready and willing to intercept any weapons if feasible as this unfolds. So you know, we saw the U.S. moving extra forces into the region in preparation for all of this. So this kind of work and preparation has been underway again for days now. And I think it's just hard to overstate how much this state-on-state conflict between Iran and Israel was a scenario that the U.S. had so much hope to avoid, given the possibility of
Let me tell you one thing. I am not getting fucking drafted, partially because I'm 32 years old, but also there is no fucking way I'm getting drafted to go and defend the genocidal apartheid state of Israel, okay? Oh my God, Biden is going to address the nation. I can't, that link is not working for some reason, Demasius. Uh-oh.
Just really have to underscore.
He's going to come out and be like, unconditional support.
In 2 hours from launch. So they travel at about 5 to 6 times the speed of these drones that we believe the Iranians are using, probably from the Shahed family, the same kind of family that is being used in Ukraine right now. Those drones travel at about 110 miles per hour. Cruise missiles of the type that the Iranians have generally go anywhere from 500 to 620 miles per hour. So that's the kind of difference in speed that we're looking at, and that is definitely going to be a challenge for the Israeli air defense system and, of course, the associated radar systems as well as the intelligence systems that are tied into that.
General Hertling, is there a possibility that if proxy groups, notably Hezbollah in Lebanon, the most capable of all the proxy groups, arguably, and then, of course, you have the Houthis down south in Yemen.
By the way, this is before Iran retaliated. Okay, this is today from the opinion of the editorial board in the New York Times, but there ain't no fucking way. There's a correction. President Biden is in the Oval Office, the pool says, not expected to speak from there currently. They wrote this today. Tomorrow, I suspect they will have a very different approach.
Israel is sitting in the middle of a very dangerous neighborhood with Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas, among others, threatening them. Do they want to go all in on a conflict? I would say no, and I think the Biden administration will be advising them no, that they are in a vulnerable position and they should look to de-escalate across the board where
That's
possible.
interesting to hear.
They still are very strong and able to defend themselves. They don't need to risk an all-out war to prove that point. And I also think it underscores the need to get to a ceasefire in Gaza, to get humanitarian assistance in to Gaza and to have an endpoint to that conflict, completely admitting Israel's right to defend itself there without question. But things need to calm down or Israel is vulnerable in the region.
All right, Congressman Adam Smith, ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, thank you so much for your time and thoughts this evening. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for the chance.
And I want to bring in Axios' Barak Ravid, who has been breaking so much news on this story today.
That's not Barak Ravid. What the fuck?
Barak, we are now seeing an expansion of what
Wait, is that
of the
Barak
Iranian
Ravid?
assault, essentially.
I don't think that's Barak Ravid, bro.
Drones.
Is it?
What are you hearing in terms of what U.S. and Israeli officials are expecting more from Iran and from elsewhere in neighboring countries?
Oh.
Hi, Alex. So what I hear from Israeli officials and from U.S. officials that the drones were launched both from Iran and from Iraq and Syria. And at the moment, some of them were already intercepted, especially by U.S. forces. What Israeli officials tell me is that it will be something like 2 a.m. local time when the drones will reach Israeli airspace. That's, I think, something like, an hour and a half from now, more or less. And the Israeli aspiration, I think, and both the U.S. aspirations, to intercept as many drones and cruise missiles as possible outside of Israeli airspace. There was an interesting report in Reuters that said that the Jordanian military is also preparing to shoot down any Iranian drone that enters Jordanian airspace. So I think that's the goal right now, to intercept as many drones as possible before they reach Israeli airspace.
And Barak, what do we know about the back channeling, the private conversations over the past few days between Iran and the United States around this retaliation?
I think we can say, we can be quite certain right now, and we see the numbers of drones and cruise missiles that were launched from Iran, that all the efforts to limit this attack and to make the Iranians maybe recalculate their decision-making failed. The Iranians, during the last few days, sent messages to the U.S. through several Arab countries that if the U.S. gets involved in the fighting between Iran and Israel, then Iran will see U.S. bases and forces in the region as a legitimate target. And I think it will be interesting to see whether the fact that U.S. forces are involved in intercepting those drones and cruise missiles, whether Iran will see this as a pretext for attacking U.S. forces in the region.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Of course, the U.S. will say that they're helping defend Israel and not going on the offense. But Barak, more broadly, I mean, we haven't really talked much about the conflict in Gaza tonight. How much do you think that this could potentially reshape what we've seen over the past few months?
Well, I think that this war has gone into a new phase, a phase that from day one the Biden administration tried to avoid, of this becoming a regional war. This is now a regional war. Even if this fight between Israel and Iran will die down in, I don't know, a day or 2 or 3 days or a week, it's a new phase. And when you look at it like that, then the Gaza war all of a sudden becomes a sideshow. And I think that the Israeli plans for, or at least the announcements about an operation in Rafah, this thing is now in the freezer. I don't think anybody will go back to this thing in the foreseeable future. And right now, the focus is only on how to contain this, direct fight between Israel and Iran.
And how do you think that this impacts how the Israeli public sees what is going on? It's one thing for Hamas to fire rockets, the Iron Dome, to essentially take them all out and give Israelis that feeling of security. But now you've got Iran, which is a whole different ballgame. So how do you think that changes the Israeli public's thinking? And that pressure had already been growing on Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yeah, here, by the way, remember, this chatter's right. How does Zionists square this with their persecution fantasy of Israel being a small being surrounded on all sides by meanie-bobini Arab countries? Israeli sources says several friendly Arab countries sent messages to Israel that they're ready to shoot down Iranian drones missiles that are fired at Israel. So shocking to me that, of course, all of the other regional actors are obviously aligned with the United States of America and will do everything they can, with the exception of the Iranian proxies and the axis of resistance.
A year ago, where he pushed back on the warnings from the intelligence services that the judicial overhaul that he's pushing is creating damages to Israeli security and is encouraging Israel's enemies to attack it. And back at the time, exactly a year ago, he said, Israel's enemies will never attack us because they know it will be a mistake. And I think that when you put those two together, I think many Israelis look at what's going on. The war in Gaza is stuck. There's no hostage deal in sight. Hezbollah is still shelling the northern border, and Israel is being attacked directly from Iran. I don't think anybody thought that this is where Israel is going to be a year ago.
Yeah, no doubt there's going to be a reckoning for Prime Minister Netanyahu and others once this conflict is over. Barak Ravid, thank you so much. Terrific reporting as always. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again before too long. I just want to note that a short time ago we had a graphic up earlier that said that President Joe Biden...
I mean, the explanation is that many Sunni Arabs hate Iran too. Yeah, dude, totally. The average Jordanian definitely is siding with Israel and loves Israel and wants to defend Israel. Like, get your fucking head out of your goddamn Iowa ass, bro. This has nothing to do with, like, Sunnis and Shias, dumb fuck. The fuck do you mean, bro? No, dumbass. It's the governments. The fuck are you talking about? It's ridiculous to have a brain so fucking cooked that it's basically soup at this point. It has nothing to do with the demands of the citizens or sectarian infighting. Motherfuckers learn Sunni and Shia in ninth grade history class and use it for every analysis. No, these guys didn't even learn it in ninth grade. They learned it like last week because they saw a fucking tweet about it. They read a tweet on Twitter and they thought this is profound analysis because it's new to me.
Himself, since confirmation of these strikes being launched, whether it is a paper statement.
Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't be so aggro towards the 14-month chatter right now, but it's still incorrect. Your analysis is incorrect, chatter.
Situation, and it certainly feels like a moment when the American people would appreciate some sort of explanation from the president on exactly what's going on, and particularly the U.S.'s involvement and how this may or may not affect U.S. personnel, for example. So a lot of questions that people have probably as they are watching these events unfold. But again, we are waiting to see whether we will at some point hear directly from the president. But for right now, the task at hand for him is getting a full picture of the situation that is unfolding, and he is going to be meeting again with his top national security advisors, Alex.
And it could be a very long evening for the president and his national security advisors. MJ Lee, stay with us.
So is this a genuine attack which has strategic goals? Or an authoritarian government reasserting authority by peacocking after they got smacked? Kappa? No, it is a genuine retaliatory attack from an authoritarian government reasserting its authority. But it is a genuine retaliation to a regional actor that has gotten out of fucking control.
Good afternoon. This attack is folding out or rolling out in a relatively consistent manner with Iran's doctrine. Swarm tactics, be it drones or small boats in the Persian Gulf, followed by Iran's powerful missile force, and then drawing upon proxies potentially to augment that capacity against an adversary. So in this sense, it's a very consistent behavior by the Iranian government.
So what more could we expect from Iran and its proxies this evening?
Well, I think the question is not only what more, but how long they
First
will play
red
this
alert
out.
from Israel
Iran has an embassy
in Mount Hermon.
Yemen, manned by a senior Revolutionary Guard official. They have intelligence personnel. They've no doubt coordinated with the Houthis. Iran also is certainly coordinated with Lebanese Hezbollah. So I think there's already in place a general plan that has developed over the past week, in which they play a role within the limitations Iran has set.
So are you saying you do believe that there will be a role by Hezbollah and by the Houthis in the coming hours?
Very likely. They will need to show that they're standing with Iran at this moment, that they are willing to put some skin in the game. But again, I think for Lebanese Hezbollah, they and also Iran don't wish to undertake steps that could lead to a conventional war, because that war is likely to inflict significant punishment on the various regimes and perhaps end those regimes.
What did you take away about what Iran hopes will unfold in terms of whether the conflict escalates or not from their public pronouncements and the private messaging over the past 2 weeks since that Israeli strike in Damascus?
Well, there seemed to be little doubt that Iran would undertake some direct action against Israel, and that Iran's actions would be thoughtful and based upon its own capabilities and perceptions of adversary weaknesses. So that again pushes you towards drones, missiles, some cyber perhaps, and proxies. At the same time, if you're in Tehran, you've got to worry about a potential Israeli retaliation. And Israel's missile, cyber, drone
consulate. They killed 7 members of the IRGC, 1 senior commander who we understand was in charge of Syria and Lebanon. He was not a household name for most of us, like Soleimani was, who was killed, of course, 4 years ago. Why do you think Israel decided to undertake that strike?
Well, there were 7 senior Revolutionary Guards Quds Force officials meeting in one location. They were almost certainly meeting to review or plan existing and future operations directed against Israel's civilians and Israel's interest in other locations. This would have represented a significantly valuable target for the Israeli government, because removing those individuals not only—
shit, dude. Never mind. Okay, guys, they were definitely gonna plan to kill Israeli. I heard that they were actually planning on raping Israeli babies. So it's totally valid. It's a valid target to hit a fucking consulate compound, because I've decided that these guys were actually saying that we will make October 7 look like a walk in the park. That's what they were saying in the consulate, likely.
Military, this was an official diplomatic building. Do you have any expectation, for example, that Iran would try to go after population centers and civilians in Israel?
Well, generally, Iran's attacks go after only civilian population centers.
Oh my
energy
God!
facilities. We saw that in Saudi Arabia through its proxies.
Of course, the fucking freakazoid on CNN is just like out of control.
Targets. But in this case, the situation is a little different. Iran
this dude
wants
cooking,
to show
I like him.
Sort of an
bro, this
equal
dude is
of the—
cooking the 7 secret spices in the fucking Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's the only thing he's cooking. Get your ass out of here, bro. Chatters be like, I love hearing analysis from a guy whose entire job was to beg the government to nuke Israel. Yeah, my
Israel in this situation.
It's 11 spices, not 7. My bad.
The region, but how do you think specifically the U.S. is helping Israel knock these drones and these missiles out of the sky tonight?
There have been public reports that the United States has shared geospatial information, which would provide information on the number and frequency of launches within Iran against Israel. Likewise, there are reports that the United States has military aircraft that are—
It's pretty funny that this guy is saying like Iran only wants to kill civilians, when Israel itself said that Iranian targets are primarily going to be military targets. And even other CNN analysts have been like, yeah, Iran is trying to retaliate, in an even-handed approach, an eye for an eye, if you will, to hit the golden zone, the Goldilocks zone, or whatever the fuck. Meanwhile, Colonel Spider Rapist over here, former Brigadier Rear Admiral General Colonel Spider Rapist, is over here being like, you don't understand, okay? Iranians don't even care about Israel. They just like murder. They like murder of the Jewish population, and that's precisely why this is happening. Don't make no mistake. It did happen right after the Iranian officials said that this would be retaliation for the Damascus embassy strike, but that's just, I mean, they don't know what they're saying. They just wanted to retaliate. That's why they waited 6 months to retaliate. Fucked up that this is what LeBron has to say about the war. Nothing like two heavyweights doing what they do best for the love of the sport. That's messed up, dude. I'm going to quote tweet. Is it cheesy to quote tweet it and be like, nothing like two heavyweights doing what they do best for the love of the sport. He's talking about Drake and Kendrick? No, he's talking about Iran and Israel.
Drones or cruise missiles before they get to Israel. As Barak Ravid pointed out, the goal is likely to intercept as many as possible before they get to Israel.
Sorry,
and then, of course, Israel has its own very capable
consulate.
Multi-layered aerial defense system. Long range would be Arrow 3. That's designed to intercept or be able to intercept ballistic missile launches. There's the medium range David Sling. And then there's the short range Iron Dome that we've seen used repeatedly. Now, Iran is very much aware, as is Hamas, as is Hezbollah, that these systems are high quality, but their flaw is that they can be overwhelmed with quantity. We have seen this, and I have seen this on the ground in Israel. A number of rockets are fired, and simply enough are fired that Iron Dome can't get to all of them. Now, there is obviously much more time here to coordinate the response and be able to use not only Iron Dome at short range, but David Sling at a much longer range. But it seems that Iran's goal here is to try to fire so much that Israel can't intercept all of it, and it will overwhelm the systems, all right? Iran is looking for some way to be able to claim some kind of victory here. So that's what we should be watching out for in the course of the coming hours, as we see not only how many were fired, more than 100 drones at this point, and then we're still waiting for a number of cruise missiles, but whether more is fired not only from Iran, whether it comes from Hezbollah in Lebanon as well, and potentially the Houthis in Yemen. Alex, I will point out one more historical.
You guys are wrong. LeBron would not be condemning Iran. He would say Iran has a right to defend itself, bro.
2018, Iranian forces in Syria fired 20 rockets at the occupied Golan Heights in Israel. All of those were intercepted. There was no damage on the ground there. I was there on the ground, but Iran then came out a short time later and said Israel was lying and that the rockets had done damage, and then claimed victory. Do we see something like that with what is obviously a much larger attack coming from Iran itself? It's worth keeping that in mind as we see how this evening plays out.
Yeah, it certainly will be. Right now, we know that there are more than 100 attack drones heading towards Israel, along with cruise missiles. So it is a significant amount of firepower heading that way. It is almost 1 a.m. In the morning, of course, in Israel. Jeremy Diamond is in Jerusalem. Jeremy, I understand you have new reporting. What are you hearing?
Yeah, that's right, Alex. I just spoke with an Israeli military official who tells me that the Israeli military intends to try and intercept these drones, more than 100 of which have been launched now by Iran, before they reach Israeli skies. We know, of course, that...
Chat, Erdogan's not doing shit. Are you crazy? Like, get out of here, bro.
Be deployed to intercept some of these drones. And so the combination of that could mean that the majority of these drones could potentially be taken down before they even reach Israeli skies. We know, of course, that there is a significant lag time, hours between when these drones were launched from Iran and when they are anticipated to arrive in Israeli skies. And so that gives the Israeli military and its partners a significant amount of time to try and intercept them, and the goal is indeed to do so before they enter Israeli airspace. I'm also told that Israel anticipates that Iran may launch additional waves of drones. That may be why the estimates that we got earlier have started to tick up. I was initially told dozens of drones launched by Iran. That has since ticked up to over 100. Additionally, Alex, this Israeli military official would not yet confirm with 100% confidence that cruise missiles have been launched, but he did say that Israel is indeed monitoring other Iranian assets for additional potential types.
If none of the Arab Gulf countries are going to do anything, how is this World War III? You think the Arab Gulf countries were going to defend Palestinians? They are doing something. They're currently busy intercepting Iranian drones that are flying over their airspace. What do you mean? They are doing something. They're doing something in the direction of defending Israel.
We're also, of course, Alex, waiting to see whether this is just going to be coming from Iranian forces directly or whether Iran will also activate its proxies in the region. I think what's so interesting about this moment that we're in is that for 6 months we have been expecting that if a significant escalation happened to broaden this conflict between Israel and Hamas, that it would come from Hezbollah, where Israel and Iran and Hezbollah have been exchanging near daily cross-border exchanges of fire. But right now, it seems that the major escalation is instead going to come directly between Israel and Iran rather than via Iran's proxy forces. But again, waiting to see whether or not those proxy forces could also be pulled in.
Yeah, it's such important points, Jeremy. I mean, this is such a formidable attack, significant attack by Iran, but they're crossing a huge amount of territory. They're crossing places like Iraq and Jordan, in theory, where there are significant American air defenses and forces that will certainly contribute to the efforts to take down these drones and cruise missiles. I want to note some new reporting from our MJ Lee at the White House. She's saying that President Biden is meeting with his national security
officially
team,
ballistics have launched, according to the Iranian government's official news wire says the first wave of ballistic missiles have been fired against Israel.
By the U.S. to knock down these drones and missiles outside of Israeli airspace.
I suspect that means, depending on, I don't know exactly how long it takes for the ballistic missiles, depending on what kind of missiles, but I suspect that it is timed specifically with the first wave of drones. So that means the drones will probably hit around the same time. If it takes around 12 minutes, that means that the first wave of drones will probably hit in the same mark, entering Israeli airspace. And I think that's what they are saying as well. Oh. Chatter came in to be like, I pray for peace as fucking Iranian drones are about to make, about to land in Israel. 6 months of genocide, no prospect for peace. 6 months of genocide, no demand for peace. And the first instance of like the Iranian retaliation chat is like, let's pray for peace, guys. Let's put an end to this. You think we haven't been praying?
Sword against Iran to prevent further attacks, not because it wishes to escalate the conflict, but whether some sort of action, be it cyber, be it a drone, some other operation, could degrade Iran's capability to fire additional ballistic missiles against Israel.
General Mark Hertling, Norm there makes a good point. We should obviously be taking with a grain of salt what we're hearing from Iranian state media here. They're the ones reporting that this first barrage of ballistic missiles has been fired at Israel. We've previously reported cruise missiles and drones. But General Hertling, to what extent do you think that this is a matter of minutes? Can you lay out the timing of what we could expect to see? Because obviously those drones are moving a lot slower than many of those missiles, if they are indeed flying at Israel.
Yeah, we discussed this earlier, Alex, and I think what we're seeing is the potential for those drones to continue the movement toward the Israeli border as Israel prepares for it. And at the same time, the cruise missiles, if they have in fact been launched, could reach there much faster. So the cruise missiles are going to overwhelm the big systems, as Alex or as Oren Lieberman and Jeremy Diamond both mentioned. Those will be the priority targets at first, to knock down those cruise missiles and destroy them. Then will come the drones, and that will overwhelm the rest of the systems. If it's been synchronized well, and what I suggested earlier might happen, is you'd have a combination of those Iranian drones, Iranian cruise missiles, a sudden launch of rockets from Hezbollah, as Mr. Rule posited, and also some cruise missiles coming out of Yemen that have been launched by the Houthis. They should, if this was a well-coordinated action, they would all hit at the same time. Or if they're sequential, it could also cause significant challenges for the Israeli air defense. And that's why I think you're going to see the United States with their systems in the area helping to defend and actually attack those incoming missiles from a bunch of different directions. But again, depending on the numbers, the directions, and the types, you're going to see a very complex attack. And it's going to be very challenging to the air defenders and the soldiers, sailors, and airmen in the area.
Are these missiles and drones more likely to get intercepted outside of Israeli airspace, or are there more formidable air defense systems inside of Israel?
Yeah, there's an acronym we use some.
Bro, can't you just pray for peace for everyone? Is that too hard to ask? Are you fucking stupid? Of course I want that. Why are you guys cynically, oh, fuck you, top of the hour bozo. God damn it. God damn it, dude. Oh my God. Oh my fucking God, dude. Oh my God. Maybe there's some fucking spare drones that can come target me in fucking West Hollywood. Holy shit, dude. This is a unique set of circumstances to be hitting a fucking ad break debate on, okay? I am not guarded against that sort of thing. The Iron Dome is not working in that direction. You son of a bitch. Imagine taking advantage of this. My momentary lapse of judgment and my weakness to fucking debate me at the top of the hour. Okay, well, I digress. At the top of the hour, there is a 3-minute ad break. And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. That is your defense against the top of the hour ad break and the 3 minutes of ads that you will see. 1436. All right, here's the 3-minute ad break now.
So it's much more challenging from an operator's perspective to knock those down.
And Oren Lieberman at the Pentagon, over the past few days, the head of Central Command, so that, well, we don't have Oren apparently, but I want to go back to Norm Rule. We've seen over the past few days, Norm, General Kurilla, the head of Central Command, which is the area of operation, which is the Middle East, he's been in Israel. What have you made of his activities and his messaging while he's been there? What is the message
Who's
that
Thank
the
you
U.S.
for the
has been
5
trying
gifted
to send
subs.
by having General Kurilla in place?
General Kurilla's presence in Israel is a tangible demonstration that the U.S. is willing to marry together our finest and most experienced regional military personnel with Israeli operators to plan an effective defense that exploits mutual capabilities. And moving back to the point made, the strong point.
Our best generals, only the sexiest generals.
That CENTCOM has very effectively used against the Houthis north to support Israeli systems, as well as the existing air defense systems in the Eastern Mediterranean, required some high-level conversations, as well as probably some understanding of what we could do over Iraq, and perhaps some sense of what regional partners would do. For example, some countries such as Saudi Arabia and Jordan would not want Iranian missiles transiting their territory or running drones. They may not want to be very public about shooting it down, but they have a responsibility to protect their territory. And how that might play out requires the conversations that would draw in the senior-most officials of CENTCOM.
All right, I want everyone to stay with us. Our breaking news on CNN